Christmas dinner always smells the same to me. Roast meat, warm rolls, something sweet in the oven that's supposed to feel comforting. I remember standing at my kitchen counter that afternoon, smoothing a wrinkle out of a folded napkin, telling myself we'd keep it simple this year. Show up, be polite, leave early if we needed to. My daughter, Sadie, was in the living room putting little paper hooks on ornaments. She was 8, almost 9. She hummed while she worked, quiet and focused, like she believed the world would meet her halfway if she stayed gentle. Before we walked out the door, I checked my bag out of habit. Phone, keys, a small travel pack of tissues, and a thin folder, plain, unmarked, slid down the side pocket like it belonged there. It wasn't festive, it wasn't sentimental, but it was the only thing in my life that felt completely honest. I didn't tell Sadie about it. I just zipped my bag, took her hand, and drove us across town toward my parents' house, watching Christmas lights blur past the windshield like they were meant for someone else. My parents lived in the same place they always had. A tidy brick home in a quiet neighborhood outside Cleveland, the kind of street where everyone has matching wreaths and nobody asks questions out loud. When we walked in, the noise hit us first. 20 people talking at once, plates clinking, a TV murmuring in the background. My sister Dana stood near the kitchen island laughing a little too brightly, her husband beside her, and their daughter Mia, my parents' favorite grandchild, spinning in a new dress like she'd been hired to perform. My mother Ellen kissed the air near my cheek and said, "You made it," the way people say we can check that off the list. My father Frank didn't hug me. He didn't need to. He just nodded once and went back to carving, already in charge of the room without raising his voice. Sadie stayed close to my side. She always did in that house, not because she was shy anywhere else. At school she spoke up. At the grocery store she asked strangers questions. But here, she moved like she'd learned something without being taught, like certain places require you to be smaller. I watched her eyes. They kept flicking toward my father, then away again. Quick, careful, like she wasn't sure what counted as safe. Dinner was set the way it always was. The good plates, the heavy silverware, the centerpiece no one was allowed to touch, seats assigned without anyone admitting it. Dana and her family closest to my parents, a few cousins spread out, my chair slightly off to the side, like an extra piece that didn't match. Sadie hesitated at the table, then slipped into a seat near the end, beside me. She didn't take anyone else's place. She didn't reach for anything. She just sat. For a second, I let myself think we might get through the night without anything sharp happening. Then my father's chair scraped back. It was a long, unpleasant sound, louder than it needed to be. Conversation thinned, not because people were surprised, but because they recognized the shift and knew to give it room. Frank took 2 steps toward our end of the table and looked down at Sadie like she was an object someone had put in the wrong spot. "That seat is for my real grandkid," he said. His voice was calm, even, like he was correcting a simple mistake. "Get out." Sadie blinked at him. She didn't understand the sentence. Not fully. She understood the tone, though. Her hands moved to the edge of the chair like she was about to stand, but her body hadn't caught up with her brain yet. And then he put his hand on her shoulder. Not a guiding hand, not a gentle one. He shoved. Sadie slid sideways off the chair and hit the hardwood floor with a hollow thud, bone meeting wood, followed by that quick, punched-out inhale kids make when they're trying not to cry too fast. She didn't scream. That's what I remember. She just sat there for half a second, palms skidding, knees folding under her like her legs forgot their job. Her face went blank with confusion first, before the pain showed up. And around the table, no one moved. My mother was the closest. She stared at the centerpiece like it needed her attention. Dana's eyes flicked from Sadie to Mia and back again, calculating something I didn't want to name. A couple relatives looked down at their plates. Someone's napkin slid off their lap and landed near Sadie's shoe, soft as a feather. That was the loudest help she got. Sadie looked up at me, Not crying yet, just searching. Like she thought there was a rule she'd missed, and if she found it quickly enough, she could fix what she'd done wrong. I stood. My chair scraped the floor in a sharp, ugly line, and my father actually flinched at the noise, not at her hitting the ground. That detail settled into me like a weight. I crossed the room and knelt in front of Sadie. Up close, I could already see red blooming across her knee beneath her tights. Her hands shook as she reached for my sleeve, tight, like the floor might move again. "I've got you," I said, low enough that only she could hear. I helped her up slowly, one hand under her arm, the other steadying her back. She leaned into me, small and careful, like she was trying not to take up too much space. 8 years old, and already practicing how to disappear. I waited one beat longer than I should have. Not because I needed permission, but because some leftover piece of me still expected an adult in that room to do the right thing. No one did. My father cleared his throat, like he was annoyed the moment had interrupted dinner. "She shouldn't have been in that seat," he said. "That place is for family." Family. The word landed in my chest heavy and wrong. My mother finally looked up, eyes wide, voice quick. "Don't make a scene," she said, like the scene hadn't already been made. Like my child on the floor was something we all needed to tidy away. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I looked down at Sadie and squeezed her hand once, steady, the way you do when you're trying to be a wall she can lean on. "We're leaving," I said, and then I reached for my bag. Sadie's grip tightened as she watched me move, panic flashing across her face like she thought she'd caused this. Like she thought leaving was her fault. "It's okay," I told her. "Just stay with me." I walked back to the table with her beside me and set my bag down carefully, right in front of my parents, between the cranberry dish and my father's glass. My fingers found the zipper. Inside, the folder waited, thin and plain and heavy in a way paper usually isn't. I pulled it out and placed it on the table. Soft sound. Clean motion. Everyone watched that folder like it was a live thing. My father's face shifted. Not anger, not offense, recognition. I looked at him and kept my voice level. Then I said the 4 words I'd only ever practiced in my head, and for the first time all night, the room went completely still. Then I waited. My father didn't reach for the folder right away. He stared at it like it might stain the tablecloth. Like if he pretended it wasn't there, the night could still be rescued and put back in its proper shape. My mother's mouth opened slightly, then closed again. Dana's hand went to her wine glass without lifting it. Someone at the far end of the table gave a small, nervous laugh that didn't land anywhere. Sadie stayed pressed against my side. I could feel her breathing through her coat, short and controlled, the way kids breathe when they're trying to keep tears from spilling in front of people who don't deserve them. Frank finally picked up the folder with 2 fingers and flipped it open. Fast. Not careful reading. Scanning. The way someone scans a police report when they're trying to spot their own name. His knuckles went pale. I watched his jaw tighten, the muscle near his ear working like he was chewing something bitter he couldn't swallow. My mother reached out as if to grab the papers from him, then stopped halfway, like her hand had remembered rules her face hadn't. "Honey," she said to me, and her voice had that rushed sweetness in it, the version she used when she wanted me to cooperate. "This is not the time." I didn't answer, not because I didn't have words, because I finally understood the pattern clearly. In my family, timing was a weapon. There was never a right time for truth. There was only the time that kept things comfortable for everyone else. My father's eyes lifted to mine, sharp and accusing. "You're not doing this," he said quietly. He didn't ask what it was. He didn't pretend not to know. He said it like he was talking to a stubborn employee. I looked at Sadie's knee again, the faint swelling under the fabric, the way she stood with her shoulders slightly rounded, as if she was trying to make herself less visible. "You already did this," I said. Then I turned us toward the door. That's when the room finally moved. Not toward Sadie, not toward me in apology, but toward the idea of losing control. My aunt stepped into the hallway, palms up. "Let's just calm down," she said, like I'd been the one who shoved a child. Dana followed, voice bright and tight. "You're being dramatic," she said, the same phrase she'd used my entire life whenever I didn't swallow something quietly. My mother's heels clicked fast behind us. "You're going to ruin Christmas," she said, and it came out sharp, almost desperate. I paused with my hand on the doorknob. Not for them, for Sadie. I bent slightly, so my mouth was near her ear. "Look at me," I said. She did, eyes glassy now, but steady. "You didn't do anything wrong," I told her. "Do you understand?" She nodded once, small and quick, like she wanted to be good at this too, like she wanted to do leaving correctly. Outside, the cold air hit my face and cleared something in me. The porch light cast a pale circle over the steps. My breath came out white. I guided Sadie to the car and buckled her in myself, slower than necessary, making the movements calm on purpose, routine as a shield. My hands didn't shake. I made sure she saw that. Then I got into the driver's seat and shut the door. The car went quiet in a way the house never was. Sadie stared straight ahead, hands folded in her lap, posture too neat. She didn't cry. She didn't ask questions. She just sat there like she was waiting for instructions on how to exist. I turned the key. The engine started with a low hum. We pulled away from the house and the window glow faded behind us, warm and fake. A few streets later, at a red light, I spoke softly. "Does your knee hurt?" She shrugged. "It's fine." It wasn't fine. But she'd learned early that saying something hurts doesn't always get you comfort. Sometimes it gets you blamed for causing a problem. The light changed. I drove. A block later, her voice came out small. "He doesn't like me." I felt the words hit my ribs, not like a punch, more like a heavy stone dropping into water. I didn't correct her with a lie. I took a breath and kept my eyes on the road. "What he said was about him," I told her. "Not you." Sadie's fingers worried the edge of her sleeve. She spoke again, even quieter, like she was testing whether the truth would punish her. "Is it because I'm not real?" I pulled over, right there on the side of the road with the hazard lights clicking, red and steady in the dark. I turned fully toward her. She was watching my face carefully, waiting for the answer that would decide how she carried herself for the rest of her life. "No," I said. I made the words solid, not rushed, not emotional, just certain. "You're real," I told her. "You're my child. You belong with me. Always." She held my gaze for a long second. Then she nodded once, slow and deliberate, like she was putting the answer somewhere safe inside herself. I reached across and brushed a piece of hair off her forehead. She leaned into my hand for a moment and then sat back, still quiet, but a fraction less tense. When we got home, I didn't talk about my parents. I handled the obvious things first. Ice pack on her knee, wrapped in a dish towel, a mug of cocoa with too many marshmallows because there are moments when extra sweetness is a kind of medicine. Her favorite movie on the TV, volume low, the apartment warm. Sadie sat close to me on the couch, head tucked under my chin like she needed the pressure of my presence to believe the room would stay steady. Later, after she fell asleep, I stood in the hallway for a long time, listening to her breathing, slow and even now. Then I went to the kitchen and set my bag on the chair. The same bag I'd carried into my parents' house with that folder tucked down the side. I unzipped it and pulled the folder out, placing it on the table under the soft yellow light. I still didn't open it. I didn't need to. Because this wasn't the first time my family had tried to make me feel like I didn't count. It was just the first time they did it to my daughter. I rested my palm on the folder and let myself think back to the earliest version of that lesson. The one I'd learned long before Sadie ever existed. And the memory that came first wasn't a holiday. It was a summer afternoon, years ago, when I was 15, standing halfway down the hallway, hearing my aunt's voice drift out of the kitchen, low, careless, like she assumed I was too far away to matter. "She doesn't really look like him," my aunt said, and my father laughed. Not a surprised laugh, not an offended one. The easy laugh of a man enjoying a joke that had been told many times. "Well," he said, "we all have our mysteries." Someone else chuckled, and I remember standing there perfectly still, realizing two things at once. They'd been talking about me like that for a long time, and no one was going to stop them. I sat down at my kitchen table with the folder in front of me, my hands flat on the wood, and I stayed there, quiet, until the next step became obvious enough to name. The hallway memory didn't come with feelings at first. It came like a fact. My aunt's voice, my father's laugh, the way the kitchen sounded normal right after, like cruelty could live in a room without changing the furniture. I stared at the folder on my table until my eyes stopped trying to blur it into something harmless. Then I opened it. Inside were clean pages, clipped neatly, the kind of formatting that makes you sit up straighter without meaning to. At the top was the name of my attorney, Mara Ellison, and a case number line that was blank for now, waiting. I read slowly, not because the language was hard, but because my body needed to accept that something real was happening. A petition for a formal accounting, a request for preservation of records, a notice that my parents, as trustees, were required to produce statements, logs, authorizations, distributions, and correspondence. Not a threat, not a speech, a process. I set the pages down and rested my hands on the table. For most of my life, my family had treated paperwork like a private language they spoke over my head. Accounts, arrangements, decisions made behind doors. When I asked questions, I got smiles, jokes, warnings with my mother's eyes, and always, that one line. "There isn't anything set aside for you." I believed it longer than I'm proud of. Or maybe I didn't believe it. Maybe I just couldn't afford the alternative. On the counter, my phone buzzed again. Dana, then my mother. Then an unknown number I recognized anyway by the timing of it. I didn't answer. I put the phone face down. Sadie was asleep. That was the only part of the apartment that felt sacred, the quiet down the hall. I didn't want their voices in here. I made myself think in steps, not big steps, just the next right ones. Step 1, protect Sadie. That meant no more visits, no more quick drop-bys, no more second chances dressed up as family tradition. Step 2, remove my parents' access to my life. That meant no calls, no responding, no explaining. Silence as a boundary, not a weakness. Step 3, let the system do what it was designed to do. If there was a trust and my name was on it, it didn't matter how my father felt about me. Paper doesn't care about opinions. When the steps were written in my head like that, the air felt clearer. I closed the folder and slid it back into my bag. Then I walked into my bedroom and stood in the doorway, looking at Sadie. Her blanket rose and fell slowly. The bruise on her knee would look worse in the morning. She'd pretend it didn't hurt. She'd try to be easy. I knew that pattern too. In the living room, I sat back down and opened my laptop. Not to spiral, not to research endlessly, just to be ready. I pulled up a small folder of old documents I'd saved over the years. Random mail, photos of forms, anything that felt like it might matter later. I hadn't known why I saved them at the time. Some instinct, maybe. A feeling that my life would be questioned one day and I'd need proof I existed. There were a few emails from my grandfather's old accountant, a scanned letter about his estate, vague and polite, nothing specific. But there was one thing that kept coming back to me. 2 weeks before Christmas, Dana had asked me to watch Mia for just an hour. The way she said it then, breezy and casual, like she was doing me a favor by letting me be useful. I'd said yes because saying no always came with consequences in my family. Not loud ones, subtle ones, cold shoulders, group texts where I was left out and then told I was imagining it. So I drove over that day. I remembered it clearly now because of what happened in their living room. Mia had been playing with dolls on the rug, narrating a story with betrayals and princesses like it was normal entertainment. Dana had rushed out with her phone at her ear, already halfway into her work call, and Dana's laptop had been sitting on the couch, closed but still humming faintly, the way laptops do when they aren't fully asleep. I hadn't touched it. I hadn't planned to. Mia had. She'd climbed up like she owned the furniture and flipped the laptop open. A password box came up. I remember my stomach tightening. I started to say, "Hey, sweetheart." But Mia's fingers moved without hesitation. She typed. The screen unlocked instantly. Kids don't know passwords unless someone lets them. I moved closer to close it, careful, calm, because I didn't want Dana coming back and deciding I'd done something wrong. But before I could, the screen refreshed. A document was already open. White background, black text, bold headings. The kind of document you recognize even if you don't want to. My grandfather's name was at the top. My hands went cold. I sat down on the edge of the couch because my knees didn't ask permission. I read fast, only the parts that mattered. Trust, beneficiaries, distribution. And then I saw it. My name. Not a nickname, not other child. My full legal name printed clean and exact like it had always belonged there. I remember scrolling just enough to confirm it wasn't a mistake. And there it was again, my name, beside Dana's, an intended split, half, half. I took one photo, clear, centered, the line that mattered most. Then I closed the laptop, smiled at Mia, put on cartoons, kept my face neutral like my world hadn't shifted. Dana had come back later and asked, "Everything good?" And I'd said, "Fine." Not because I was fine, because I knew better than to confront my family without something solid in my hand. 2 days after that babysitting day, I'd sat across from Mara Ellison in an office that smelled like coffee and printer toner. Mara didn't waste time with sympathy. She didn't soften her voice. She looked at the photo on my phone for about 5 seconds, and then her expression changed, just slightly. "If your name is on it," she said, "they don't get to pretend you don't exist." I'd swallowed hard. "Even if they say," she held up a hand, "even if they say anything." That was my first taste of what it felt like to be spoken to like a person with rights instead of a problem to manage. Mara explained it in plain language. Trustees have duties, beneficiaries have access, records have to match reality, and if records don't match, the court steps in. I didn't ask Mara to punish them. I asked her to make them tell the truth. Now, sitting at my kitchen table with Sadie asleep down the hall, I opened my phone's photos and found the picture again. The document on Dana's laptop. My name on it. Half. I zoomed in until the text was sharp, until it stopped being a blur of legal language and became a simple line that could anchor me. Then my phone buzzed again. This time it was a voicemail notification. Frank. I stared at it for a long moment without tapping it. My hands were steady. I didn't need to hear his voice right now. I already knew what he would do. He would try anger first, then bargaining, then blame. Then he would circle back to the same old question he'd used like a quiet knife for years. Do you even belong here? I set the phone down and opened my email. A new message sat at the top, time-stamped a few minutes ago. From a sender I didn't recognize at first. Then I saw the signature line, a law firm name, my father's attorney. The subject was short, polite, and heavy. Response to petition. I clicked it once, and I waited for the page to load. The email opened without fanfare. No dramatic wording, no threats in all caps. Just a PDF attached, a short note above it, and a signature block with a downtown address and a phone number that looked expensive. I downloaded the attachment and opened it. The first page was titled like something routine, Motion to Dismiss. I read it once, then again, slower. They weren't denying the trust existed. They weren't denying my name was on it. They were denying me. It was written in that clean legal tone that makes ugly ideas sound reasonable. They claimed my petition was harassment. They asked for sanctions. They suggested I was acting in bad faith. And then, right on page 2, they did what I knew they would do the moment the money couldn't be explained. They tried to turn it into a question of blood. They alleged long-standing uncertainty about my parentage. I sat back in my chair and exhaled through my nose, slow, not because I was shocked, because I felt the accuracy of it. That was always the backup plan in my family. If I asked for anything I was entitled to, they didn't answer the question. They questioned whether I had the right to ask. I closed my laptop for a moment and stared at the kitchen wall. The apartment was still. The fridge hummed. Somewhere in the building, a neighbor's shower turned on and off, normal life continuing. Then I opened my laptop again and forwarded the email to Mara Ellison with one line. This is their angle. My phone rang 10 minutes later. Mara didn't start with comfort. She never did. They're trying to make the court look at you instead of the accounts, she said. Her voice was steady, almost bored, which I appreciated more than sympathy. They want spectacle. We won't give it to them. What happens now? I asked. Now we stay procedural, she said. We keep it boring. Boring wins. I let that settle. Mara had a way of making things feel manageable simply by naming them correctly. Not family war, not betrayal, just filings, deadlines, obligations. Do you want to do a test? I asked. There was a pause on her end. Not hesitation, deliberation. Not for court, she said finally. And not because they asked. Your name is on the trust. That's the point. Trustees don't get to rewrite documents based on suspicion. But if they keep pushing, they will, she said. And we'll keep refusing to let them drag you into it. We stick to records and duties. The court's job is to preserve assets, not to referee family gossip. I closed my eyes for a moment. In my head, I saw Sadie's face when she asked if she wasn't real. That quiet fear in her eyes, the way kids store words like scars. What about Sadie? I asked. She is not part of this, Mara said immediately. They don't get access to her. You hear me? The case is about a trust. The rest is noise. I did hear her. I hung up and sat there for a long time, hands around a mug I'd reheated twice without drinking. Then the messages started again. Dana sent a text that read, "You're ruining everyone's life." My mother followed with, "Please call me. Let's talk like adults." My father didn't text. He waited. When his message finally came, it was a single sentence, cold and controlled. "You're not taking anything from this family." I stared at it until it stopped making my chest tighten. Then I deleted it. Not because it didn't matter, because I didn't want it living in my phone like a permanent fog. That night, Sadie shuffled into the kitchen in her socks, hair messy, eyes half open. She stood in the doorway like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to interrupt my thoughts. "Mom?" she said softly. I turned toward her and kept my face calm. "What's up, honey?" She rubbed her knee absent-mindedly. "Am I in trouble?" I shook my head. "No." She blinked slowly, still not convinced. "Grandpa was mad." I walked over and crouched in front of her. I kept my voice low, even. "Listen to me," I said. "You are never in trouble for someone else hurting you." Sadie looked down at her socks. "Do I have to say sorry?" "No," I said. "You don't apologize for being pushed." She stood very still for a moment, like she was letting that sink in through layers of old family rules. Then she leaned forward and wrapped her arms around my neck, quick and tight. It wasn't dramatic. It was practical. Like she needed proof my body was still here. I kissed the top of her head and held her until her shoulders softened. After she went back to bed, I went to the closet and pulled out the folder again. I didn't open it this time. I just checked it was still there. A week later, Mara called again. They filed their response, she said, and we filed ours. Hearing is set. How soon? I asked. Sooner than they wanted, she replied. The court doesn't like trustees playing games. I leaned against the counter, steadying myself with my fingertips. What do I need to do? Mara's answer came like a checklist, calm and clear. Step 1, don't contact them. Step 2, don't respond to anyone on their behalf. Step 3, bring nothing but your presence. I'll bring the paperwork. I almost smiled at that. Not because it was funny, because it was the first time in my life someone had told me I didn't have to perform to be believed. The morning of the hearing, I packed Sadie's lunch like it was any other day. Peanut butter sandwich cut diagonally, apple slices, the granola bar she liked because it didn't crumble, a napkin with a little snowman printed on it. Normal things. Sadie watched me from the table while she tied her shoes. Her knee had a faint bruise now, yellow at the edges. Are we going somewhere? She asked. Yes, I said, but you're going to school first. Ms. Hart is expecting you. She nodded slowly. Then she hesitated. Do I have to see them? No, I said. You won't. Her shoulders dropped a fraction, relief, quiet, and immediate. After I dropped her off, I drove downtown with the folder in my bag, though I didn't need it. Mara would have copies. The folder was more for me now, a reminder that I wasn't walking into this empty-handed anymore. The courthouse parking garage smelled like oil and cold concrete. I sat in my car for a moment with the engine off, hands resting on the steering wheel, breathing slowly until my pulse settled. Then I stepped out, locked the car, and walked toward the building. Inside, everything was pale and polished. The air had that dry, recycled feeling, like it had been filtered too many times. I found the hallway outside the courtroom and stopped. Across the corridor, my parents were already there. My mother sat with her hands clenched in her lap, eyes down. Dana leaned close to my father, whispering urgently, her face tight with anger and panic. My father stared straight ahead, jaw rigid, like he could hold reality still by refusing to look at me. Mara arrived beside me with a thin briefcase and the calm posture of someone who had been in this hallway 1,000 times. She touched my elbow lightly. We're not here to debate, she said. We're here to preserve. A clerk opened the courtroom door and called our case. I took one slow breath. Then I walked in without looking back. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Neutral walls, neutral carpet, rows of benches that looked like they'd been wiped down too many times. The air smelled faintly of paper and old coffee. People spoke in low voices, like the building trained everyone to keep their emotions contained. Mara and I sat at the table on the left. My parents sat across from us with their attorney, a woman in a fitted blazer who arranged her papers like she was setting a dinner table. Dana sat behind them, angled forward, already tense, like she planned to win this with facial expressions alone. My father kept his eyes on the front wall. My mother stared at her hands. No one looked at me like they were sure anymore. That was the first thing I noticed. When the judge entered, we stood. Then we sat. The rhythm of procedure settled over the room and made everything feel less personal, which was exactly what I needed. Mara didn't start with Christmas. She didn't mention Sadie's knee. She didn't say the word real. She didn't talk about family at all. She stood, introduced herself, and spoke like she was reading a manual, clear, steady, almost plain. Your Honor, the petitioner is a named beneficiary. We're requesting a formal accounting and preservation of records. The trustees have refused transparency. That was it. No performance, no pleading, just the shape of the problem. Then my father's attorney stood. She smiled once, small and practiced, and began in a tone that sounded concerned, almost gentle. This is, unfortunately, a family conflict, she said. And emotions are driving this petition. The trustees have always acted in the best interests of the family. The word family landed like a blanket thrown over a mess. She continued, moving smoothly through the motion to dismiss. Bad faith, harassment, an attempt to punish. Then she arrived at the part I knew was coming, like a train you can hear before you see it. There has been long-standing uncertainty, she said carefully, regarding the petitioner's biological relationship to the settler's son. My father's head didn't turn, but I saw his jaw tighten. Dana's eyes flicked toward me, sharp and satisfied, like she'd been waiting to watch that sentence hit. The judge didn't react right away. He looked down at the papers in front of him, flipped a page, then another. Calm, patient. The kind of patience that isn't kindness, just experience. Then he looked up. "Is the petitioner's name on the trust?" he asked. My father's attorney hesitated for a fraction of a second, just long enough to show she didn't like the question because it was too clean. "Yes," she said. The judge nodded once, like that settled something. "Then the trustees have duties," he replied. "This court is not here to litigate rumor. We're here to preserve assets and enforce fiduciary obligations." He turned slightly, eyes moving to my father's side of the table. "Trustees don't get to withhold information because they have personal suspicions," he said. "They either comply with the instrument and the law, or they answer to the court." The air in the room changed, not loudly, not dramatically, just a subtle shift in gravity, like everyone felt the floor tilt toward consequences. My father's attorney tried again. "Your Honor, the trustees have concerns that—" The judge raised a hand, not irritated, just done. "Concerns are not a defense," he said. "Produce the records." Mara stayed still beside me. She didn't look pleased. She didn't look vindicated. She looked focused, like this was exactly what procedure was supposed to do when people stopped behaving. The judge spoke again, more specific now. "Temporary order," he said. "Freeze distributions. Preserve records. Full accounting required." Dana's mouth parted slightly, like she hadn't expected the words to come out that directly. My mother's shoulders dipped, almost imperceptible, as if something she'd been holding up finally got too heavy. My father didn't look at anyone, but I saw his hands. His fingers curled once into the edge of the table, then relaxed, then curled again. A small, controlled movement, like he was calculating what this would cost and how fast. The judge turned back to Mara. "Counsel," he said, "provide a proposed schedule. I want disclosure organized, not chaotic." "Yes, Your Honor," Mara replied. Then it was over. Not the case, not the story, but that round of it. The gavel didn't slam. No one gasped. People just stood and gathered their things the way they do when something important happens and the building refuses to acknowledge it emotionally. In the hallway outside, the noise returned in fragments. Shuffling shoes, low voices, the beep of an elevator. Dana came toward me first, face tight and bright with anger. "You're sick," she hissed under her breath as she passed, not loud enough for anyone official to hear. "You're doing this for attention." I didn't respond, not because I didn't have words, because she wanted words she could twist. My mother moved slower. She looked like she wanted to speak, but she didn't. She just hovered near my father, hands wringing together like she was trying to squeeze out a different outcome. My father walked past me without stopping. Then he paused, just a few feet away, and turned his head enough to look at me directly. For the first time that day, really look. His eyes weren't furious, they were narrow, measuring, like he was trying to decide what I was now that I wasn't obedient. "This isn't over," he said quietly. His voice was controlled, almost polite, which made it worse, like he believed control itself was authority. I met his gaze and kept my own voice level. "It is," I said, "because it already happened." I didn't wait for his reaction. Mara touched my elbow again, gentle but firm, steering me away from the hallway and toward the exit like she was keeping me out of a weather system. Outside, cold air hit my face. I stood on the courthouse steps for a moment and let the feeling settle. Not victory, not relief, just something clean and unfamiliar, being protected by rules instead of people. Mara looked at her phone, then back at me. "They'll have to produce records now," she said. "And once records start moving, things tend to surface." I nodded once, because I could feel that too. On the walk back to the parking garage, my phone buzzed. One new message, from a number I didn't recognize, but the wording was familiar the moment I saw it. A relative. Short. Careful. "Hey, I heard something. Call me when you can." I stared at the screen while the garage door rose ahead of us, humming upward like nothing in the world had changed. Then I put the phone back in my coat pocket, and I kept walking. The records didn't arrive in one dramatic drop. They came the way consequences usually do, steadily, in plain envelopes and secure links, spaced out just enough to keep you from catching your breath. Mara set up a shared folder with scanned statements, distribution summaries, approval logs, and correspondence. Everything was labeled by month and category. It looked clean, professional, almost harmless. But paperwork doesn't feel harmless when it's been used to erase you. I opened the first batch on a Saturday morning while Sadie was at a friend's house. I made coffee, sat at my kitchen table, and treated it like a task, not a trauma. Tasks can be finished. The first few pages were exactly what you'd expect. Balances, interest, routine entries. Then the pattern started. Money out again. Descriptions that sounded respectable, education support, housing assistance, family needs, and beside them, in the column marked Authorized by, the signatures. At first, I only noticed my father's. His name appeared again and again like a stamp. Then I saw my mother's handwriting. Neat, curved, unmistakable. Not once, not twice, over and over. I stared at the page until the ink stopped looking like ink and started looking like a choice. My throat tightened, but my face stayed still. It wasn't grief. It wasn't shock. It was the clear, cold confirmation of something I'd avoided admitting for years. It wasn't just him. She knew. I sent Mara a message with one line. Her signature is everywhere. She called me within minutes. "I saw," she said. I didn't ask how she sounded so calm. That was her job, staying calm so the truth could stay sharp. "They can't claim ignorance with this volume," she continued, "and the court isn't going to like it." "What does it mean?" I asked. "It means we quantify it," she said. "We make it simple. Start point, intended distributions, end point, unauthorized transfers. We let the math talk." That night, when Sadie came home, she took off her shoes and went straight to the kitchen to show me a drawing, 2 stick figures holding hands inside a small house with a tree beside it. "That's us," she said. I smiled and put it on the fridge. Then she looked at me, head tilted slightly. "Are Grandma and Grandpa still mad?" "Yes," I said, honest and gentle. She nodded slowly. "Do we have to fix it?" "No," I told her. "That's not your job." She accepted that the way kids accept what matches their instincts. Then she asked for cereal, as if the world didn't contain lawsuits and signatures and old cruelty. The second batch of records arrived the following week. Mara asked me to come into her office. When I walked in, she didn't offer coffee. She didn't make small talk. She slid one page across her desk and tapped the top line with the end of her pen. "Start here," she said. I read it. "Trust principal at death. $520,000. I blinked, then read it again. The number stayed the same. Mara pointed lower. Intended split, 50-50. I did the math automatically, my brain trying to stay in control by doing something it could measure. Half. My portion should have been $260,000. Mara tapped the bottom of the sheet. Current balance, $41,000. The room went very still. I didn't speak for a moment. Not because I didn't understand, because my body needed time to accept how casually people can steal when they think the target doesn't count. "That's not possible," I said quietly. It is, Mara replied, and the records show how it happened. She laid out the key transactions in a clean timeline. A down payment that lined up with Dana's first house. A vehicle purchase the same month I'd asked my parents for help after my apartment break-in years ago. The month my mother had looked at the counter and said flatly, there wasn't anything. Tuition payments labeled education that never came near me. Renovations. Family support. A neat story of theft dressed up as generosity. What do we do? I asked. We present it, Mara said. We let the judge see the pattern, then we ask for restitution, interest, legal fees, and removal of trustees if necessary. Removal. The word didn't feel dramatic. It felt appropriate, like taking keys away from someone who keeps crashing the car. The next hearing was quieter than the first, more procedural, more final. The judge reviewed the numbers as if he'd seen this kind of thing 100 times and didn't have patience for it anymore. My father's attorney tried to frame it as confusion, as family helping family, as decisions made with good intentions. The judge leaned forward. Helping family requires consent, he said, and documentation that matches the trust's purpose. You don't spend a beneficiary's inheritance and call it support. My father sat rigid, eyes forward. Dana's face stayed tight, but I saw the fear underneath it now. Not fear for me, fear of losing what she'd been living inside. My mother's hands shook slightly on the table. Mara stood and went through the timeline, point by point, without raising her voice. And then the judge spoke the words that changed the rest of my life. This court finds mismanagement, he said. He paused, glanced down at the page again, then continued. This court finds diversion of trust assets. Diversion, a clean legal word that still means stealing. He ordered restitution calculations, interest, penalties, and legal costs. He set deadlines and consequences. He made it boring and unavoidable. In the hallway afterward, my phone buzzed. A message from my mother. I didn't know how to stop him. I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed back 4 words, calm and exact. You signed your name. And I blocked her number. Not out of anger, out of clarity. The final hearing arrived a month later. By then, the case wasn't about whether records would be produced. The records were produced. The story wasn't about family conflict. It was about numbers and fiduciary duties and signatures. Everything my parents had tried to keep invisible was now labeled and numbered and stamped. The courtroom felt even smaller that day. My parents looked smaller too. Not physically, socially. My father's confidence was gone. He sat like a man who had finally discovered that intimidation doesn't work on judges. Dana kept her eyes down most of the time. My mother didn't look at me once. Mara presented a final summary that fit on 2 pages. That was the point. If you can explain a theft in 2 pages, it stops looking like confusion and starts looking like intent. The judge listened, asked a few clarifying questions, then delivered his decision without drama. Restitution of my full share, plus interest, plus legal fees, plus penalties. A total amount that made Dana's breath catch audibly from the table behind. My father didn't react outwardly. He just stared forward, jaw tight, like he was trying to hold himself together through sheer stubbornness. When we walked out, he stopped near the courthouse doors. This isn't over, he said again, quietly, like he couldn't let go of the script. I met his eyes. This time I didn't feel anything sharp. No fear, no old guilt. It is, I said simply, because it's written. Outside, the wind cut through my coat. Cars moved along the street. People carried coffee cups. Life kept going. Mara stood beside me on the steps. They'll pay, she said. They'll have to. I nodded. Then my phone buzzed again. An email notification. From a law office I recognized now by the formatting. A short subject line. Payment schedule and enforcement. I didn't open it there. I just stood for a moment in the cold air, letting the quiet settle in my chest. Not victory, not revenge, just the steady feeling of something being handled the right way. Then I walked to my car and drove home to my daughter. 4 months later, the money landed in my account. No balloons, no ceremony, just a deposit line with a reference number and a date. I stared at it longer than I expected to, not because I was excited, but because I needed my body to accept that it was real. Restitution, interest, legal costs, penalties. It wasn't a gift. It wasn't an apology. It was a correction. They sold their house to cover it. I didn't hear that from them. I heard it the way you hear most things about people you stop speaking to, through a cousin who just thought I should know, through a comment made too casually at a birthday party I didn't attend. It didn't make me feel good. It made me feel finished. The first thing I did was boring on purpose. I paid off what needed paying. I fixed the things I'd been patching for years. I moved us into a smaller place with better light and locks that didn't stick. I chose a building with a front desk and a courtyard where kids could run without crossing a street. Sadie claimed a corner by the window on the first day and lined her books up like she was building a wall of her own. I opened 3 accounts, one for her college, one for emergencies, one that I labeled privately, Peace. Not because money buys peace, because it buys time, and time is what you need to keep a child safe. Then I did the most important thing I'd never been taught how to do. I stopped explaining myself. No calls, no long texts, no just for closure. I didn't send updates through relatives who wanted to feel like mediators. I didn't correct lies on social media. I didn't argue with people who liked my parents better when I was quiet. Silence can be a weapon, but it can also be a boundary. At first, there were attempts. A holiday card addressed to our girls, like nothing had happened. A voicemail from a blocked number that came through anyway. My mother's voice, thin and careful. A message from Dana that read, "When Sadie is older, she'll understand." I deleted them all, not in anger, in order. Sadie didn't ask about them much after we moved. The first few weeks, she still watched rooms the way she used to. When we went to the grocery store, she stayed close to my side. When a stranger spoke too loudly, her shoulders rose a little. Then, slowly, her body stopped bracing. One evening, we were in the cereal aisle, standing in front of 2 boxes like it was the biggest decision of the day. Sadie was explaining very seriously that chocolate cereal counted as breakfast if you added strawberries. I pretended to consider it like a debate, and then it hit me. I wasn't scanning the store for danger. I wasn't rehearsing what I'd say if someone approached us. I wasn't tightening inside my own skin. We were just there, safe, ordinary. That was when I understood what had really changed. It wasn't the money. It was that my child was no longer learning fear as a default setting. At home, our holidays became quieter. Pancakes for dinner, a crooked little tree we decorated with paper ornaments, movies we'd seen before, a routine that didn't require anyone's permission. Sadie laughed more, the kind of laugh that takes up space. One night, while we were rinsing dishes together, she handed me a plate and asked, like she was asking about the weather, "Mom, what does family mean?" I dried my hands and thought for a second. "Family is who keeps you safe," I said, "even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." She nodded, like that was enough, then splashed water at the sink and grinned, back to being 8 years old instead of someone trying to earn a place at a table. Later, after she fell asleep, I sat on the edge of her bed and watched her breathe for a while. I thought about the version of me who would have apologized to keep peace, the version of me who would have swallowed that shove and tried to smooth it over with a laugh. The version of me who might have taught her, without meaning to, that love is conditional and safety is negotiable. That woman felt far away now. I didn't save my family. I saved my child. And in doing that, I saved myself. A few weeks after the case ended, someone from work pulled me aside and said quietly, "I heard you went through something with your parents." It wasn't gossip exactly. It was the careful way people talk when they suspect money and legal trouble, but don't want to say it out loud. I didn't correct her. I didn't give details. I just said, "It's handled." She hesitated, then said something that stayed with me. "My sister's going through something similar," she said. "Different story, but the same feeling, like she's not allowed to ask questions." I nodded. I understood instantly, because families don't all use the same words, but they use the same tactics. Confuse you, shame you, make you feel unreasonable for wanting clarity. When she walked away, I stood at my desk for a moment and felt something simple and steady. If someone I cared about ever needed the steps, I could give them. Not speeches, not revenge plans, just steps. That night, Sadie and I ate dinner at our small table and argued gently about whether marshmallows belong in cocoa year-round. She smiled with her whole face now, no checking the room first. After she went to bed, I wiped down the counters, set the mugs in the drying rack, and turned the kitchen light off. The apartment settled into its usual quiet, and I realized I liked the quiet now. If you've been listening and you enjoy calm, true stories told without shouting, please take a second to like the video and subscribe. It helps this little space grow. And tell me in the comments what city you're watching from and what time it is where you are right now. 2 popular stories will be waiting for you next.